Hey everyone, welcome to Flow. This session is about what exactly automation is. If you've been to Flow last year, or if you've been going through the automation journey on your own, without having been to Flow necessarily, you'll know that automation is very much a journey. And it's something that you don't necessarily finish ever. There's a ongoing process, there's iterations that you go through. And what I want to do in this session is actually give you a different perspective on what automation really is. I'm going to take you through a different kind of journey. And we're going to explore something that we call is the automation mindset, and how that automation mindset can help not just with automation, but in other areas in business, in your process design, and so on and so forth. I'm not used to giving 30-minute speeches, so I don't know if we're going to get through everything and what it's going to be like. But we're going to try it. Right now, when people say automation, they're thinking like coding, but in reality, a very common word that we use that we don't necessarily associate to automation is the word automatic. And when people say automation, what they really mean and what they're really talking about is a process or system that just goes without thinking. There's no real engagement. It's just something that just happens, right? Or, put another way, it's something that just happens automatically, like I said, using that word. Actually, automation came from a Greek word that I have no idea how to pronounce that means self-moving or acting of its own free will. So technically speaking, has nothing to do with really code. And some of this was actually discussed by Aaron in his keynote about robots, which was not planned. Hi, I'm Mendy, if you don't know who I am. Founder of Rising Tide Consulting Group, current CEO of MSP Geek Community. I like to break things, generally speaking. And I don't really like public speaking, even though I do it a lot. I do like helping people. It's why I became a technician at an MSP initially. Our agenda is going to be, we're going to talk about automatic automation. We're going to talk about layers of automation. We're going to talk about complexity versus simplicity, and what we think is what. We're going to talk about front end versus back end. This doesn't sound like an automation talk, really. This is more like a programming. And we're going to get practical. And then, if we have time, we'll ask where AI comes in. It doesn't have to be an AI conversation. There are a lot of things that happen in this industry. One of those things is the advent of buzzwords. Every time the industry discovers something, innovation occurs, we get the cloud, and suddenly everyone wants to go to the cloud, and what does the cloud even mean? Nobody even knows. We got single pane of glass. Right? This is a quote from the MSP Geek community. Somebody posted on Discord, and I just have to steal it from them. It says, "I have enough single panes of glass to build a rather ornate church window," which is true. Automation right now, today, is the new buzzword, along with AI. Right? The two together are buzzwords. And we really want to talk about what is the automation behind the buzzword. What does that mean? Right? To do this, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. We're going to have a quick practical demonstration that hopefully you'll be able to see because it's a little bit dark. But there's going to be some self-defense involved, a punch and a block. If you don't want to get hurt, it's okay, we're not going to hurt you. If someone wants to come up on stage with me, raise a hand. Anthony, right? Can't see your face. Come on up stage. We're going to go through a demonstration. I took Krav Maga, or a version of Krav Maga. My instructor will yell at me if I call it Krav Maga, but it's a version of Krav Maga that I took for a few years. And one of the things that they have is they go through different blocks and strikes that are built around human reaction. So, Anthony, if I were to throw a ball at you, or let's say a pen, what would you do?
Put my hands up and catch it.
Exactly.
I would try to put my hands up
and catch it. Right. So that response of the hands up, my hands are already up. That response of the hands up is what we call in ICS, the Israeli Combat System, is the version of Krav Maga that I learned, is what we call the flinch response. And so if someone is coming at you or punching you, you like flinch, essentially. And what they do is they lean into the reaction of the human body to build the defense. And so what's going to happen is there's something called an outside strike, where it's like a hook, basically, okay? And you're just going to punch me. You're going to punch me, right? In a hook. Go for it. All I'm doing is I'm doing the exact same flinch response to block his wrist from coming close to my head, right? What's happening here is literally the ICS system built on the normal human reaction of a flinch to basically lean into that reaction. You can do it again, one more time. And I'm just going to stop his punch before it gets close. And he can go faster if he wants. It doesn't hurt. Go for it. It's not going to hurt me. It's going to hurt him. Go for it. All right? It's going to hurt his wrist. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep reacting the same way every time, because the defense is layered upon a trigger that a normal human, if you have a healthy sense of self-preservation, will do when something comes at their face. It's just to flinch. Here's the recap of what we just did, right? Hands come up automatically. We're not really thinking about it. It's just a flinch. It's a normal, natural human reaction that just happens. And we don't really need to catch the ball necessarily, right? We just have to stop it from coming to us. If we catch it, great. If we don't catch it, at least it's not hitting us. And we don't have to get the move to be perfect every single time. Much like automation, if we go 60, 70, 80% of the way, we still accomplished enough to then go to the next step. Right? We're going to do one more demonstration with our volunteer/tribute. We're going to do the same exact thing, where this time, go ahead and punch me. What I'm going to do is, if you do that again, what I'm going to do is at the same time, I'm actually going to extend my arm to punch him at the same time back. And you do the counter strike. And this is the next step that they teach you. When you do the block, you also want to strike back at the same time, every time. And all they're doing, again, is going back into the normal, natural reaction. They lean into the flinch response, and they layer another reaction on top of it. Give it a round of applause for our volunteer, please. We're done. Thank you.
I promise I get to choke you?
No, that was a different... No, you want to choke me? You can choke me, but that's a different... Outside this room. So that's it. Like that is the essence of automation that we're talking about, is basically layering responses, layering reactions, layering processes that happen on top of existing processes, existing triggers, so that when something happens, what you need to occur happens as well, right? And things it just occurs automatically without thinking, because it doesn't require cognitive thinking. It's not like an advanced tactical skill that you have to remember how to do. You don't need to practice it from a young age. Within 5 minutes, I could have Anthony doing the same thing that I just did. It's really, really easy to pick up, and it doesn't require any advanced training other than just practice and repetition, just so that you get the accuracy done. But the actual process itself is very easy to do. Okay, so let's bring this example back to something that's more practical, right? Back to the MSP life, because this was fun but not really relevant, or it seems like it isn't, right? Back in my day in service desk, it was not uncommon for us to get a call from a client who had gone on vacation and forgot to turn on their out-of-office response, right? And so what do? Can you please turn on my out-of-office for me? Like, no, do it yourself. Here's instructions. Do it from your phone. Sometimes clients are like, no, I can't can you just do it for me? And sometimes the MSP doesn't really want you to say that back to the client, and they just want you to be full service. The process that it takes to go impersonate the mailbox or get the credentials, if you did, don't tell anyone, or log into a licensed account and then access the other mailbox to set up out of office, it's a very lengthy process, especially if you don't have permissions in place, and it can take some time, and so on and so forth. One of the early automations that was shown off by Rewst in the Friday rock calls was somebody who had built a form that you just populate the parameters of the out of office, the mailbox you want, the date range, what the message should be, and it just goes and sets that out of office for that mailbox. Right? Very, very simple process that we've now removed a lot of the complexity for and just complete that. Okay, so imagine you're using this automation and you like it a lot and you're starting to like open up to the idea that maybe automation is actually a real thing that could be helpful to you. And you start thinking about like what else can you automate? And you think, well, I have a client who has a lot of turnover and we're constantly firing people, or they're constantly firing people, not we, right? I bet you thought I was going to talk about the onboarding process. A lot of people talk about onboarding. And instead, you're like, instead of running around 45 minutes to clean up groups and permissions and whatever, every single user, we're going to create an offboarding process. Depending on your client or your MSP, your offboarding process likely includes an out-of-office message being set on the mailbox because you want to tell whoever's emailing that person that they're not there anymore. So what are you going to do? Are you going to create a whole new out-of-office function inside of this offboarding process? Or the correct way, I'm not going to let you answer, is to just align the parameters that you need to use the existing out-of-office automation you've already been using and then call it from inside of the offboarding process. The reason why you do this, if it's not obvious at this point, is because we're layering the automations to a single point where if Microsoft were to change how the API works, or if an improvement to that process can be made, you don't have to run around more than one place to change and improve that out-of-office process. You go to that one place, and anything that calls that process will immediately benefit from any improvements, changes, or fixes that you make. This is what we mean when we talk about layering automations. And it's exactly what the Israeli combat system did when we talk about layering on top of reactions and reusing skills so that you don't have to decide, well, should I punch this way or should I punch that way, right? It's very easy, it's very simple. When we start talking about layering automations, things can get fairly complicated very quickly. Have you ever seen what it looks like when you have a script that gets referenced a million times from different places, or a workflow? It gets very messy very quickly. And so a lot of people don't necessarily like doing that, and they feel like the amount of time and effort it would take to manage, I need to check my time. Where am I at? 2:31. A lot of people would say the amount of overhead it takes to manage this workflow and script is too much. And so we want to break it up to smaller pieces. This is a mental trap. There's a difference between cognitive complexity and instinctive complexity. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. In order for this to work, you have to be able to see the screen. So if you can't see the screen, move up from the back of the room. Well, I'm going to show you a set of sentences that you're only going to be able to read for 2.5 seconds. Okay? By the time it goes away, when it disappears, I'm going to ask you a set of questions about those sentences. And you're only going to have 2.5 seconds to read it. So if you're a speed reader, don't talk because you're going to ruin my thing. No, I'm just kidding. You can. And let's just see how we do, okay? We're just going to shout out the answers. Are you guys ready to see it? That was a test. Nobody, like I heard some yeses, like that didn't sound like you're ready. Are you ready to see it? There you go. All right. All right, how far did you get? How many sentences did you read? All right, so question number 1, what's the project ID? Who is the agent assigned to that project? No, that's the name of the project. Anyone know the agent assigned? Yeah, okay. What was the description of the project? Okay, some of you are pretty quick readers here. Nice. I think I'm running out of questions. All right, here's what I'm going to do now. We're going to present the exact same data in a different format for the exact same time frame. Are you guys ready to see it? All right. How far did you get? Can you answer all the questions now? Did the data look more or less complicated than the previous data set? Well, you consumed it better, but it was actually a more complex structure than what you would normally be able to read. because it wasn't a full sentence. And that's the difference between instinctive like simplicity or complexity versus cognitive complexity. And here are some comparisons. With fewer questions presented, there are open-ended statements are easier to read, but to understand and know what to do, it's a little bit more complicated. So for example, let's say we're walking down a path in the forest, right? And you get to a fork, and you're following a process to get to, let's say you're reading a map or whatever, and a fork in the road is where you reach, and the map tells you, pick whatever path is best. Right? Now you have to figure out, okay, well, what defines the path being best? Right? It can get a little bit complicated, and that's just the tip of it. It's just going to get more and more, you have to get more involved in figuring out the process instead of continuing to focus on getting to your destination. Now, if we change the map, and the map says, well, you're at a fork in the road, okay, is the left path clear, or are there brush or something in the way? And that becomes a yes-no answer that you can just look at and instinctively get. And what will end up happening is if you start building your processes using Boolean, essentially true, false, or yes-no statements, what you'll start to see is larger processes that look complicated, but when you actually execute them, they're actually very, very fast. Because to answer each step and to move on to the next one becomes literally a true, false statement that you can instinctively answer just by reading it, just by seeing it. Even though it looks complicated, it can be like a 30-page document, but if it takes you half a second to get through all 30 pages, it doesn't matter. You can have a half-a-page document that you don't understand because there's so many procedures and policies behind the scenes that you don't know. And that's the difference between what you think is complicated and, in reality, what the computer thinks is complicated, right? We actually see this with passwords as well. When people talk about password complexity, right? What we think is complex as a password, the computer is very simple. They can crack it very easily. Versus what we think is simple as a password, it can be something as the cow jumped over the moon. Good luck having the computer crack that, right? At least in terms of complexity. Dictionary will go right through it. All right, so the point here, and we actually, if you ever talk to like a business consultant as an owner or high-level person, the consultant's going to tell you, stop working in the business. You need to focus on the business and let your people work in the business, right? It's a fairly common saying that they're going to have. And what we're doing here is the opposite. When we have a complex process that the technician has to know and be trained on in depth or has to make decisions unrelated to the work that they're doing, that means they're not working in the business, they're working on the business, which is not what we want them to do, right? We want them to not have to worry about the process itself, and they have to just be able to quickly move through the process while focusing on their actual job. Which takes us to the next part, I think anyways. Process as a product, okay? So what we're going to do, or what we're talking about here, is the ability to now take a process and break it up into two sides. We have the process front end and the process back end. The front end is what the person doing the process sees. That's what they interact with. That's something we want to have constrained in a Boolean format, like I said, true, false statements, that they have very little thinking to do in order to use it. And this is actually pulled from basic UX practices. When you're designing a product or designing an interface on a website or whatever, right? How many people are going to go to a website that's complicated to use and be happy using it? How many people love every time Microsoft changes their portal? Yeah, I figured that would get a laugh, right? When it gets complicated, it gets frustrating to use, and you have to go deep to learn like where things are and how it works, right? Processes shouldn't be that way. Good UX should be very simple on the front end. All you're doing is making an intuitive, interactive experience. And then what you're doing is you're offloading all the complicated pieces to what we call the back end. Going back to the example of walking through a path in the forest, right? And coming to a fork in the road. the idea that we want is for the person walking to pick the best path forward. That's what we had written down initially. But we can't expect them to know what that is. And so we make that the back-end process, picking the best path forward, and instead we present a front end of Boolean questions that'll help determine the system to know which one is the best path forward. And so we go through a series of questions. Yes, it's clear. There's nobody else on it. It's not rainy. It's not muddy, whatever. And then by the answers that we give through yes-no answers, the system can understand, oh, the right path is the best path forward. Go right. And that's the process that we complete. There's another idea here. So let's apply this to a process for like offboarding a user, like I had mentioned before, right? So we may have a goal for offboarding the user that would be like locking the account, redirecting the email, notify HR, so on and so forth, maybe archive files, whatever. This is the only part of the presentation that was written by ChatGPT. I asked it to give me a quick offboarding process. Now we can literally ask the question to the technician to say like, hey, should HR be notified? Like, are we supposed to lock the account, or should we be disabling completely and removing all licenses? Like, what are we supposed to do here? But the technician won't really know that necessarily. And instead what we can do is we can present questions of like, what's this determination? Or was it, were they fired, or did the guy leave? Was it a resignation, right? Are we gonna keep email active, yes or no? Who should get access to their files in a dropdown? And essentially providing an interface to the technician where the decision of what should happen to the account is on the back end based off the answers provided by the tech. All right, so we're at the part where we have some practical tips. And I was yelled at for presenting this in a complicated data structure when I was showing this presentation to somebody. They're like, you should mimic that simple structure. It's easy to read. What we want to do is we want to understand the context of the process that we're working on. Are you working on a front-end or back-end process? Right? And we should make sure that if you're working on a back-end process, we should be able to accept inputs. Even if you think you're never going to use it again anywhere else, do not hard code any values. It should always be inputs, because that'll allow you in the future to utilize it as a function. If all you do is align the parameters, populate the values, and then that same exact thing can always be used over and over again. Front-end processes, like I said, should be explicitly defined, constrained, where the technician doesn't have to think, or whoever's running the process doesn't have to think to know what they should be putting in, right? How many times do you give a process to somebody and they say, cool, I'll go do it, and they come back, hey, I have a question, what does this mean? Or what does that mean, right? If they're doing that, that means the process probably isn't fully thought through. The person shouldn't have to do that. It should be something that's self-explanatory just by reading the process, ideally. And then going back to the point about having long, arduous workflows or scripts to maintain, yes, it will or can happen. That's the sad truth about anything. If it gets too big, it's hard to maintain, and you need to keep proper notes and documentation. But what you want to do is strive for balance. If you have any kind of process if you have a process that's either too heavy on the front end or too heavy on the back end, you're asking for trouble. There should be a balance. We do and can expect a certain level of cognitive input from the person running the process, right? Just don't make it too much and don't make it too little so that you don't have too much on the back end there. Here are some other examples of what this means, and I apologize if you don't use HaloPSA because they're all screenshots from HaloPSA, except for there's a couple of Rewst ones as well. If my animations are in the correct order, we have a new ticket screen, which is kind of hard to see. But it looks fairly complicated. There's a lot of inputs here we have to put in, and this is just to create a brand new ticket. Like, I have to fill this in every time I create a ticket? That's just nuts. And so instead, we have this screen instead, right? One of the reasons, I'm just going to go back for a minute if I can. I don't know if it's going to let me here. One of the reasons we just shifted, if you notice, there's some inputs that we've moved it above the text box. One of the reasons we did that is because of that problem we have where we do need to rely on some cognitive input from the technician, right? Now, if I'm a tech and I go through taking a ticket, and I log my summary, user has an issue with the software, I take all my notes down, software's not working because XYZ, it's installed in this location, here are some screenshots, whatever. 3 minutes later, I'm done with my notes, and now it asks me for a category of the ticket. Now, at this point, I don't know about you, but I'm checked out. I did my work. I have all my notes in there. I don't need to do anything else. And so as a technician, I'm not thinking or spending any time at all picking a category or an impact or an urgency. And I may or may not get it accurate, but I don't care anymore because I've already dumped all my notes in. On this screen, we moved those inputs above the notes. And so the technician knows they have to get to the notes. That's when they can check out. And so they're still engaged when they pick a category. They're still engaged when they pick impact and urgency. And then they put their notes, and then they're done with the ticket. And that's it. It's all about the front-end design and the user experience when you're building your process and how it's going to look like. I'm running a little bit out of time, but here's some more examples. If you're looking at a ticket and you've got actions to perform on the ticket, which action am I going to pick of the hundreds of actions you can see on top of the screen? Right? You don't have any way of knowing unless you're very well trained and you had a lot of practice. Versus an actual properly defined workflow, I have one button. You can't screw that up. Technician opens a ticket, they see, oh, I guess I need to triage a ticket. They hit triage. Ticket's triaged. Oh, here's what I can do to work on the ticket. The process is designed intuitively so that they know I need to email the user, I click the email user button. Very simple constrained options where they're not overloaded with options. And the same thing happens when they're actually, here's the closed ticket. When the ticket's closed, they can just reopen it. When they're entering time, it's the same idea. We've got a lot of options here. I don't really know what they all do necessarily. If I'm looking at my status dropdown, I've got a lot of statuses to pick from, right? Versus, and I'm clicking really fast because I'm at time, basically. This ticket time entry screen, I now have controls with checkboxes that are very easy to understand. If I want to add travel time, I know I go click travel time. I know I have to add it now. If I want to don't change the status, I can check that. My status dropdown, way less. 3 options. Why? Because I'm emailing the user, and there's only 3 statuses that make sense when I email the user to come out. Right? We've offloaded the decision-making to the back end, and on the front end, we only present the constrained options that make sense for that technician. And then we have this in Rewst. This looks like a very complicated workflow in Rewst. But when you look in and you zoom into it, you actually see those binary settings or binary decision-making that happens as the flow occurs, which actually makes it a really simple workflow to understand when you start looking at it beyond the high level. Right? What looks complicated is actually really simple. Here's a quick recap in case you missed it. We did not have time to get to AI, which I'm not disappointed about. It's okay. We don't need to have every session have an AI mention. Automatic automation, layers of automation, complexity versus simplicity, cognitive complexity versus instinctive complexity, front end and back end, and then practical examples. Thank you.